Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Charlton Live, sponsored by PSF Steel Limited. My name is Louis Mendes. This is the big match preview. Hope you guys are all well on your Thursday evening. On this week's show, then we will, of course, be gearing up for Saturday's trip down to Exeter City, plus much, much more. Joining me to have those conversations, first up top right, Mr. Tom Wallin. How you doing, Tom?
I'm all right, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. So you bottled the yellow shirt wearing again today?
Yeah, it's all folded, packed, ready for its trip down to Devonshire on Saturday. So it's good to go.
Yeah. Are you going with it, or are you just sending it down there?
Just sending it representative for me.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I might start doing that, especially the longer ones when you can't be bothered. Just send easier, like a pair of socks or something. Yeah, excellent stuff. Also joining us, bottom of the screen there. Not sure if she's sending any items of clothing down to Devon this weekend. Is Tash Everett? How you doing, Tash?
Evening, Louis. Yeah, I can't go on Saturday, unfortunately, although I don't know whether that's fortunately. Judging off the FA Cup game, maybe it is. But at least we avoided that banana skin, so I'm good.
Excellent stuff. So on tonight's show, as I said, we'll be looking ahead to the game with Exeter City. We'll hear the team news from Nathan Jones later on in the show. All the important team news rules, everyone in or out who needs to be. Terry with the hard-hitting questions in that press conference earlier on today. And we're also hopefully going to hear from John Beer from the You Don't Know What You're Doing pod. Used to be called My New Football Club. We had him on last season as well. Mr. Exeter City knows everything about the Grecians. He'll give us the lowdown on Gary Caldwell's side. But in the first half an hour of the show, I've been looking forward to doing this. We do this maybe once a year. We're going to sort of go through our summer transfer business and debate how well we think they've settled in so far. So plenty of you guys will get involved with that. So good evening to everyone who joined us in the chat, including Gary, who left when we were 3-2 up on Saturday in the FA Cup game down at Southend. Well, you still saw a win, I guess. You just saw it a bit earlier than everyone else did. Evening to Gary. All hell that loose is in there. Andrew, Shiny Phil. Says nothing short of an Addicks win will do this weekend. Joseph, Paul, John's in there. Dudley, Scott, Andy Miller, who's joining us from stateside. Good afternoon to you. I hope everyone's having a good time on your Thursday evening. Yeah, let us know when you get involved how you rate the players we're about to talk about. But just very, very briefly, Tom, I did say we would react to the FA Cup draw as well on Sunday's show. It happened just before. What happened in the evening after the show went live. Walsall away, big game, tough game, doing very well in League Two, and I think they've beaten in one competition or another about 3 League One sides already. So League Cup, FA Cup, they beat Bolton, and I think did they beat Birmingham on pens in the Papa John's or whatever it's called. So it's going to be a tough one.
I mean, I'm not your man to come to about that tournament, am I? But. Yeah, FA Cup is one I actually quite like, particularly if you get through to the third round. And that's obviously what we're all looking at. So I was a little bit disappointed with the draw, but realistically, who are you going to get in the second round that excites you? I think Bromley was probably the big one, wasn't it? That we could have got. It would have been a fun local derby.
A proper non-leaguer, I guess.
Yeah, exactly that. So Walsall is one of those where it's a fair journey away. It's going to be a tough game, as you say. I don't know what our record's like there, but in my head, we struggle there. And obviously a lot of us have probably been there before, so I don't know how many people we're going to take, but it's one of those that if we can get through it, as I say, then you're in the hat for the third round. So yeah, not a given by any means, but we obviously battled through, as Tash was saying, to get through to this stage. It sounds like Jones is taking this cup seriously. I think he's really keen to get a big tie, isn't he, in the third round? So got to go there, be professional, and remind ourselves that, we will be the favourites going into that game, I suspect. So, not an easy tie by any means, but just got to try and get through it.
Lovely stuff. Well, we will look ahead to that game in the build-up to it. As Stuart Court points out, we've been knocked out of the FA Cup twice before. I think this will be the 4th time we've played them. The 2002 one I remember particularly well. Was it Lieto got a brace? We were Premier League and they were, I'm guessing, Championship, but maybe even lower, and they came and beat us at the Valley. One of our classic FA Cup runs when we were a Premier League side that we often seem to struggle with. Andrew's just asking, there was a story in The Sun about us being forced to move. Who planted that and why? I saw that earlier. I don't think anyone's really paying too much attention to that. We know what the deal is with the lease running out at the Valley. And there was apparently they've been offered a couple of sites elsewhere, but I can't really see anything coming of that at this moment in time. But obviously that is one thing down the road that needs sorting out sooner rather than later in terms of the lease or, of course, buying the ground. But that's a conversation for another day. Right, we're going to dive into this. As Paul Davenport said, it was probably clickbait. I think it probably almost certainly was. You didn't write it, did you, Tash? Or...
No, the Sun are in our building, but it wasn't me.
No, okay, all right. You just fed them the story. All right, there we go. So, yeah, excellent stuff. Right, we're going to dive in now to the highlight of the show. I think it's going to be very, very interesting little debate because it's probably going to take the full sort of first half an hour of the show. We did it sort of this time last year. You settle in, you get your new signings over the line. And then we will sort of see how we think they've started life at the Valley. So feel free, everyone in the chat, to get involved in this one. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up the names of all our summer signings on the screen here right now. As you can see, it's in Excel, as you'll be delighted to realise. Yeah, we're going to go through them one by one and rate them out of 10 and give ourselves a score at the end of the sort of summer transfer window for how we think our signings have settled in so far. So if you want to get involved in the chat, write down the player's name and then give him a score. So because there'll be a little bit of overlap once we move on from one player to another. And if you're just putting in a single digit number, it might be a bit confusing for me to try and see which one you're going to go for. But we'll start at the top of the list. These are in no particular order as well. I just copied it off Transfer Market. But at the very top of the list is the Gasman Ahadme, winner of the goal of the round in the first round of the FA Cup. Signed, of course, from Ipswich in the summer. Hasn't had the greatest of starts. Tom, where are you sort of landing Gas? And everyone in the chat, give him a score out of 10 and a little bit of a conversation or a comment if you want to as well.
If we're assuming a 5 is the average, I think somewhere between a 5 and a 6, probably, which might be very generous. But I think I wasn't expecting him to be our prolific goal scorer at all. I think he was always going to be sort of a supplementary or second striker to somebody else, probably Godden, and obviously we'll come on to him. He looked really unfit for the first couple of games. I remember seeing him up at Wigan and he was so slow. And then when we came back for our first home game, didn't look much quicker. And obviously hadn't scored until was it Shrewsbury away. And even that was a little bit fortuitous, shall we say. But he had that injury as well, so that counts against him. And then obviously came on as a bit of an impact sub for the first time, albeit in the FA Cup, albeit against a lower ranked side. But the one goal of the round, it was a good finish. And I think there's a player in there. And I think he was probably slightly hampered by the way we were trying to play at him in those first couple of games, using him as a target man without really anybody around him. So I don't think we can go above a 6. But I think he's been a little bit victim of circumstance, to be honest. And I think if he starts to be used a bit of an impact sub, similar to the way Miles probably would be used if he wasn't starting, but I think it'll be Miles starting because he's the better player. But I think there are a lot of similarities there. So if Miles gets tired, particularly whilst he's sort of getting back into fitness, then I think Gas might come on and might make an impact. So yeah, I would say probably around a 6 is about fair. Yeah,
we're seeing 5s and 6s coming in the chat. 1-4 from Stuart. I mean, Andrew's saying it should be a 6. He's had no service. James is saying King Gassan. He gives him a 5.5. Paul's saying a 6 off the ball, but need to see more on the ball from him. Michael's saying still no real midfield play, so we're just knocking it long to him, gives him a 6. Luke saying a 5. Andrew saying a 5. And there's loads of different ones in there. ND Miller saying his own goal was special. I mean, where are you sort of landing him, Tash?
I put a 6 and I thought I was being generous, but apparently not. I'm glad that I'm not just being over generous like most of them will be. But no, I feel like also the fact that I know that they're different players, but Alfie May was our number 9 and then he's left, and that is obviously a massive gaping hole to fill. And I think from the get-go, Gassan was sort of, going to have a bit of trouble trying to compare to that. I mean, arguably, you brought in Godden as well, as we said, like to help replace Alfie's goals. But yeah, he's always going to be on the back burner a little bit from the get-go. Like someone's pointed out, like off the ball, I can't fault him. But yeah, his own goal kind of summed it up, didn't it? He couldn't get on target and couldn't hit a barn door when he started, and then scored an own goal. And I think, yeah, Saturday obviously put him up in our estimations and hopefully kicks on from there. But yeah, it's been disappointing if we're being totally honest about it, especially because of the transfer fee we paid for him as well.
Lovely stuff. Right, so based on the averages coming through the chat, and bear in mind I haven't got a calculator with me. This is just me scrolling through what everyone's saying. I've gone for 5.5. So we've got into fractions already, which shows how indecisive we are on this show. Right, let's move on. I'll let Tash go first on the next player. We'll try and sort of rotate between the two. So Greg Doherty, the Addicks skipper, scored a great goal against Bolton. But what else are we saying? And again, give us your scores in the chat. I mean, Scott's saying it'd be good if we could try and weight those scores against transfer fees paid, but that'd be quite. I mean, yeah, maybe later, but that'd be quite the calculation. I do that sort of stuff all day. So Tash, yeah, Doc, the skipper.
I've gone for a 6. I had a 7 originally, and then I've knocked him down a bit. As you said, the goal against Bolton, I sort of thought, oh yes, like we've got another midfielder that can score goals. And then, to my knowledge, I don't think he's scored another one since, has he? I think in the beginning, I was like, I liked him. I didn't really have a problem with him. At Wigan, he didn't do a lot, but I sort of thought, well, you know, he's getting into it and all this sort of stuff. But unlike some of the other players that we'll go on to that I feel like have sort of come into their own, I don't feel like that with Doc. I almost feel like he's sort of stayed where he was in the beginning, where I don't feel like he's having a massive impact. And I just want more from him, I guess, like, especially because he came from Hull. Hull fans said, you know, I think he was with them when they got promoted from League One last time. And I thought, oh, yeah, he's gonna do a good job for us. And I don't think he's bad, but yeah, I think in terms of, I don't think he's brought a great load, if I'm being completely honest. And there's another side to it as well, where the fact that he got given the armband, and, you know, we don't know what goes on behind the scenes and what it's like in training and whatever. He might be that vocal leader that you would expect a captain to be. But personally, on the pitch, watching games, I haven't massively seen that, to be honest with you. So, yeah, I went for a 6.
Yeah, I mean, from interviewing him, I think once away at Reading, possibly twice, but that's the one I can definitely remember. I can sort of see personality-wise where he feels like he'd be quite a good captain and a good sort of member of the squad that other players can lean upon. But it is also obviously what he's done on the field of play as well. Tom, I mean, all hell that Luce is saying he thinks he's a disappointing 5. Stuart saying a 5. Dudley saying a 6. Doc saying 5. 5s from Paul. 6 from Dean saying nothing special. He's steady. Michael saying don't see he's done too much wrong, but then how do you notice him with a 6? Shiny Phil saying a 6. Alan saying a 5. There's a 4 from Gary, and no real impact, says Andrew, whilst giving him a 5. John's saying a 4 for captain. He expected more. There's a few more. There's a 5 to 6. I mean, where are you sort of landing the skipper there, Tom?
I think I'd probably say 5. I feel like 4 and below, they've got to really be doing a bad job, and I don't think he's done badly. But if I'm giving Gas a 6, I don't think he's quite at the same standard as Gas. And look, Gas's 6 is not brilliant either, but I agree with you about what you said about his personality. I remember when he did the interview with the club about getting the captaincy as well, and I thought he came across really well, and I was excited by him. And a little bit like Gas, really. I think I'd just built up that player in my mind, and I think Nath was saying he was going to had him down as his player of the season before we'd even kicked a ball, and we haven't really seen that. And I think a little bit like Gas, he's a little bit victim of circumstance in that we haven't really played through our midfield much this season at all. But at the same time, maybe we're not playing through because those players aren't there. So I think that midfield has to take some of the responsibility as well. And I think if we are going to play a 4-man box, at the moment, he probably makes it into that starting 4 purely based on numbers. But I think if we got another player in, I think you're looking probably at Coventry, Taylor, Berry and one other. And at the moment, it seems to be Royal Dock is that 4th one. But I think out of the 4 midfielders, that's probably the weaker link. I think off the ball, he does a lot of work, a lot of pressing. I saw a couple of people say when we've got teams where we press high, I think he's very effective at that. But for somebody who's maybe playing higher up the pitch, we need him to do a little bit more creatively. And aside from that goal against Bolton, we just haven't really seen it, which is frustrating because he's one of those players I really want to do well. And I'd love to give him more, but I just don't think we've seen enough from him yet.
Yeah, a couple more comments. I mean, Scott says, let's not question it. He does have a leadership mentality. He wants to win and progress us as a club, and that's the captaincy selection. James saying 4.5. ND saying 6 might be a bit generous. Joseph saying He says he's added little, poor leadership. He contributed okay, but I expected more. Robbie saying a 5.5. Paul saying he's a solid citizen, but not skipper material on the current evidence. And Luke saying out of possession he gave him a 5, but on the ball he's not been great. Played well against Birmingham and Bolton, where he could press all game, but not been impressed yet. And they were the two games for me where he stood out. I've given him a 5 based on the averages coming in. I mean, if anyone wants to go through every single comment and do an actual average, that would be helpful. But it's yeah, that's quite a lot. Moving on, right. One of the former Luton Town contingent, Luke Berry, amongst our top scorers, got 4 goals already so far this season. But has he done much more for you, Tom?
Not much more, no. I've given him a 7. Again, just if I'm using Gas as the benchmark as the first score, I think he's been more of an impact than that. But again, maybe not as much of an impact as I would have liked. As you say, has got us goals. Obviously, the 2 at Barnsley most recently, and can be effective. But I think when you look at the levels he's played at, then you maybe expect a little bit more from him. Again, is that just because we're not really playing through midfield? I don't know. But I feel exactly like Andrew says there. I feel like sometimes he just disappears a little bit in games, and that's frustrating. But as I say, I think he's made more of an impact and been more of an important player for us than Gas. So therefore, I'd give him a 7. But I don't think you can really go above that, to be honest.
Yeah, a lot of people in the chat saying a 7. I mean, all hell let loose says 6 could be a 7. Stuart Court says 7 will score 10 goals this season from midfield. Dudley saying a 6. Stuart 6. Berry 7 from Joseph says he's amongst the most consistent, showing a knack for positioning and timing in attacks, and that's certainly been the best part of his game. He knows when to pop up, Tash, and score a goal, which is sometimes a problem we've had with midfielders over the years. But like I said to Tom, like it's sort of like, how does that balance up with what else he does for the team? I mean, looking at the scores in the chat, I think it's looking like a 7 for most people. But where would you sit?
I've gone for a 7. Yeah, I think the goals at Barnsley sort of summed him up for me. I think where he hasn't had as much game time as he probably wanted this season, and there's been games where I've like, why is he not playing and all this sort of stuff. But then when he is used, he can make an impact. But then again, he can, as people have said, like in those games, he can ghost a little bit. And I can't remember what game it was now. It might have been Birmingham. I might be wrong about that, but I kind of forgot he was on the pitch, to be honest. So he can have games like that, but then he can have games like Barnsley where he has got us out of jail and we should have gone, even though it would have been jammy, we should have won that game and seen it out. So he's had moments where he has got us out of jail, both at home and away. And I think we've missed having a player like that you can rely on in those moments to come up and get a goal out of nothing and just go for it. So yeah, in that respect, give him a 7, but I do agree that he could do more in terms of his wider game. I do agree with that.
There we go. I've given him a 6.8 based on everyone in the chat. So no one's gone higher than 7. Most people seem to be leaning towards it, but there are a few who've gone below. James says he looks a little bit disinterested at times. Shiny Phil saying he looks menacing on occasions, but without the goals, he'd struggle to be a 6. And that's sort of where I am in it. Yeah, I can see James is asking if we can score Nathan Jones at the end. Maybe I'll add him in at the end if we get time. That's not a bad idea at all, actually. Right, let's move on to the next one. Josh Edwards. So whose turn is it to go first? Tash again, I think. Signed from Dunfermline in the summer. Suffered a nasty injury at the hands of Sean Clare. Tash, how have you rated his start to the season?
Not to sound like Gregor Howard of Strictly Come Dancing, but it's a 7. But yeah, I think, to be honest, that probably would be higher actually if he hadn't got injured and spent that time out. I know it wasn't that long, but yeah, I think I love Josh. I think he's been a brilliant signing. As someone that when he came in, I thought, who is this guy? I've not heard of him and all that sort of stuff. I think he's done very well. And I think the only thing I'd probably want more from him, and I know this will come with time when we're a bit more comfortable defensively, because we're not at the moment. But his attacking side, I think we've said that before about like the wing backs or the full backs, whatever like formation we want to play. I think I'd like to see that a little bit more from him. I think he's got that in his locker. Having said that, I think he's bagged a few assists recently, so he is getting there. And at the end of the day, he pushed Thierry Small out, and I know that obviously we've said before, like Small was in a very bad team, for want of a better word, last season. So inevitably he was going to shine. But I think not many people would have expected him to be pushed out of the 11. So for that, I think, he deserves a high score. And I love him, to be honest. I think he might be my favourite signing from the summer. So there you go.
So he's probably going to get a higher score here then. So I mean, all hell let loose, saying that sort of an 8 before his injury, a 7 after. Stewart a 7.5. Dudley, Josh a wholehearted 7. He works hard. Says he puts in decent crosses. Steady start so far. 7 from Stewart. Michael saying 7. We can show why he was brought here. I mean, Robbie Smith says he should be a 9. 100%. Gives 100% early contender for Player of the Year if he stays fit. Great signing. Edwards 7.5 from Alan Jones. Scott a 8 or a 7. Yeah, there's some 8s and there's some 7s in there. A 7.5. Tom, what do you reckon?
7 or 7.5. I agree with everything Tash has said, so there's not really much for me to add in terms of that. I think I would have given him higher if it wasn't for the injury. So exactly as she said. That first game, probably an 8.5 or a 9 out of 10 away at Wigan. But obviously the injury has then held him back. So I wouldn't be going above a 7.5. Again, looking at where I've given other people scores. And someone put it in the chat there that with the team sort of so-so, I think they described it as sort of mid-table. You can't really go that high with anybody. And he certainly hasn't, for me, been the best player. We'll come on to that, or the one who's made the most impact. So, and I don't think really we're going to give anybody much above an 8.5, I would think. So, 7.5. But in terms of why, it's exactly what Tash said.
There we go. Those are great comments in the chat. But we'll move on. This will be an interesting one. Will Mannion, the goalkeeper, was brought in, obviously, at the start of the summer. There was all that effort to try and sign another goalkeeper, Tom, that never happened. He's made some fantastic saves this season. And he's had a couple of boo-boos as well. Stuart Wallace has gone in for Big Willie straight away with a 6.5. What are you saying, Tom?
I had him at 6.5 as well. And again, if I'm comparing him to everybody else, I had May at 6 and Berry at 7. And I think he probably slots somewhere in between there. As you say, I think he's made some really good saves. There's been times where from set pieces, he's been commanding of his area. And then there's been times where he's done some very silly things and probably made mistakes or should have saved shots that he hasn't. So, I think he's, I thought he was an upgrade on last year. And then obviously Ash made a good performance the other week. But I do think he's starting to grow into probably our number one at this stage. It'll be very interesting to see what we try and do in January. And I've said this a lot, I think victim of circumstance in that when he had a solid defence in front of him, we were keeping clean sheets. And when injuries came and that started to get mixed around, that's when maybe he struggled a little bit. I appreciate that that's his job and he can't just not be partially to blame for that. But I don't think it's enough to mark him down. So, I would have said 6.5.
Yeah. I mean, looking at the chat, Mannion's 7 according to Stuart. Dudley's giving him a 7. Alan a 7. 6.5 in there from Stuart, as we mentioned. Scott Taylor says he give him a 7. 6.5 from George. 6. A couple of 6.5s, not so convincing. Joseph said he's a 5. Struggled to find his footing this season. Limited impact on the pitch and some inconsistent performances. I think we're sort of between a 6 and a 7 there. Tash, you got anything you want to add?
Yeah, I'm going slap bang in the middle with a 6.5. I think the fact that he wasn't actually brought into the club to be a number one, and then, when he was at Cambridge, he wasn't number one either, and then kind of got put in for a bit, and then only lost his place because Cambridge's number one was, they told him he was going to be number one. That was the reason why he was there, not really on merit apparently, but. So considering all that, and he's had to step up to do that, and we never managed to find that sort of senior number one that we did want. I think he's done very well. I think that for the last couple of seasons, every time a goalkeeper has been on the ball for us, I've been very nervous, especially if we're passing it around the back and doing what we do, and making those mistakes like we did last year. But I think with Mannion, I do feel a lot calmer with him, despite some of the mistakes recently. I think, obviously, beginning of the season, he was protected a lot by his backline. That's not his fault. It's just the defence is doing a good job and keeping him from having to do too much. But I don't think he's done badly at all. I think he needs a bit of time to grow into it, and that's fine. But I think as well, like chopping and changing the defence in front of you doesn't help very much. So I think give him a bit of leeway with that. But there's improvements he can make, and he's not perfect. But I think if we're looking at the options that we had last year. I can't even remember the name of the goalkeeper that played against Craig Valley. Someone can remind me of that. But the options are better.
Sam Walker, something like that.
Yeah, I wanted to say Sam Taylor, but that's not it, is it?
Nah.
But yeah,
someone Google it.
I think he's a much better option as a number one, I think.
Lovely stuff. Right, let's start rattling through these. We've got another 5 or 6 minutes to go through about 5 or 6 players here. Alex Mitchell. Tash, let you go first on that one.
Just looking at my notes of what I put. I actually gave Alex Mitchell a 7.5. Purely because I feel like, well, when he's with Jones, he plays better, I think. But, without him being there, he's not completely collapsed. He has still done a good job. Like every defender, you have hairy moments, but I think overall he has done very well. And to be honest, he goes up from a 7 for me just purely because of the S-housery against Wrexham. If I'm being completely honest, that just put him up in my estimations. And then Maddie was giving it to them and putting them in their place. So, and I've just missed having a defender like that, like someone that, I feel like the players over the last couple of years haven't really had the right to have that attitude, whereas I feel like Alex Mitchell, he just has it. So yeah, I've enjoyed watching him, and as a player as well, he's been good. And I think as a character in the dressing room, I can imagine he's good as well. And to be honest, as well, sitting in the East Stand in games, I can constantly hear him barking at people, and that is something that we've missed over the last few seasons. So yeah, he's got 7.5 for me.
You'd be better off speaking English than barking, but as long as he's communicating somehow. Yeah, I mean, so the scores in the chat. I'm going to say we're probably looking at an 8 there. 7. I'm going to give him a 7.8 looking at some of the comments in the chat. Loads of really good comments in there. Luke did say would like him to be more of a threat when we have corners and free kicks, which I think is probably fair. Right, Tom, I'm going to let you move on straight away to the next player, Matty Godden. Obviously, our top goal scorer, I think 6 goals in all comps. What are you making of him so far?
Yeah, he's who I've scored highest. I've given him an 8. Mitchell, I absolutely agree with what everybody said, including Tash. But yeah, Godden's the one I've put as the highest. I think he started a bit slowly. I know he's injured, wasn't he, or just wasn't playing for a little bit. And I was a bit worried about what we'd signed, knowing what he looks like on paper and what I've seen him do in the past. But I think you just look at when he gets in games, he's our most natural finisher probably at the club. I'd love to give him more than 8, but I think the problem is, 1, we're probably comparing him to Alfie May in the season he had, and 2, I do think there are times where he just doesn't get in the game enough. And for a few shows, I've been saying, I don't think that's his fault. I think that's the team. But actually, he takes some of the responsibility for that as well. So I'd love him to get in the games a little bit more. And if he does, he'll be looking at a 9, 9.5. But until that happens, I think an 8 probably.
Yeah, Andrew's saying he's even better than Ronnie Schwartz. Well, if I mean, must be right up there. Yeah, lots of good chat in there. Loads of people. I'd say probably around an 8. Although there is a chat says Gordon 7.5. Alfie May is much better. Shouldn't have sold, and that's from someone called Alfie. So that could be Alfie May rating himself there. But I'm going to give him a 7.8 as well. No, I'm going to give him 7.9 because I think he deserves more than Mitchell, and that's. We've got to have a winner, haven't we? Right, let's get through the last few. So there's a bit of potential here, I guess. Kahim Dixon, we won't have seen much of him. He's more one for the future, Tash. So quite a difficult one to score. But briefly, where would you sort of land him?
If I'm being completely honest, I've not watched him in the flesh yet. So this is difficult for me to judge. But from what I've seen people say, he might not have been in the team like a lot, and people sort of felt that when Hilton was playing, and people were sort of asking, well, where's Dixon? He had a nice cameo, and had a shot when he came on, so maybe been unfairly treated there. But yeah, get to see more of him. I know he's very young, so maybe that's what Nathan Jones is thinking, bringing him in slowly. But I'll give him a 5 purely because I just don't know. But yeah, hopefully people in the chat and you guys are better insight than me.
Yeah, I think with the potential that's there, obviously there's a score to be had in terms of that. But yeah, let's just call him 6. 6 is what you get when someone's just come off the bench and you haven't seen him play yet. It's unfair to go too high, too low with him. But excited to see what he does. Alan Campbell, Tom, let's have your brief thoughts on him.
Well, I've given him a 2, but that sounds incredibly harsh. But when he first came on, I thought he was going to be one of the worst players I've ever seen. I can't remember which game he first played, but he looked so out of his depth. And he's got a little bit better, but I really don't know what he offers us, to be honest. I don't know what I expected. So he's not even got the expectation hope to sort of back that up. I'm just not impressed with him. And as I said, when I was sort of labelling our best four-man midfield, I just don't think he's anywhere near it, really. So I think he's on loan, isn't he? So, if he could go and we could get someone permanent in Jan instead, that would be better. But I know that sounds harsh. I just don't know what I'd be giving him any more than that for, really, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the scores. I think 4 is on average. There's a couple of 2s in there. He's not really hit the headlines so far. Right, another one that's really difficult, Tash. So even if you just want to shout out a number, has he even played a game? Dan Potts, generally, has he played a game? He came off the bench once, maybe.
I was thinking, did he start the Bristol Street Motors Trophy, whatever the hell that competition?
Away at Cambridge.
Cambridge, that's the
All
one.
right.
Yeah.
Well, we won that, so 10.
Yeah. No, so I remember, because I watched it on, proper armchair fan here, look at me, watched it on Sky, and I didn't think he did anything wrong, but at the same time, he wasn't particularly outstanding. So, again, it's one of those where I'm like, don't know much about this guy, to be honest with you. Like, I've kind of forgot he was here, which says a lot. So maybe it's too hard to judge, or do we just go start back in the middle?
I'm going for a 5. Looking at the scores, that might be too generous. I'm going to go for a 4.5.
That sounds good.
So he's only above. He's above Alan Campbell because he hasn't played much, whereas Alan Campbell has played and unfortunately hasn't really done anything yet. And finally, Danny Hilton, Tom. I mean, the touch alone for the goal in the build-up to the goal against Chelsea was obviously 100 out of 10. But yeah, what have you made of Danny Hilton's arrival on the scene as Charlton's 6th choice striker?
I had him down as hard to say /10, and obviously the 10 was exactly for that. I think he'll be quite fun. He comes on, he messes people around, he harries, he hassles. He's a pain in the arse for the opposition. I think he'll be a good role model for some of those younger players to just teach them to be a little bit stronger. We've seen people like TC get muscled off a few times far too easily. So I quite like what I see. Again, I don't know how I can give him a score above kind of a 5, really, because he hasn't done anything, or apart from that one touch. And as you say, he's come in as a 6th choice striker. What 6th choice striker is getting more than a 5 out of 10? I don't know. So, it's no slight on him that it's a lower score. It's just because of the sort of impact he's there to make. But I hope he continues to do what he's doing, because I think he'll be a good asset for us every now and again.
Yeah, right. So I've gone for a 5, looking at the averages in all the chat. There's some really good comments in there. So if you're sort of watching on catch up, you have a look on YouTube and look at the live chat. So out of our total score for 11 players, so out of 110, we've given ourselves a score of 66.5. Which again, I think is probably higher than we got at this point last season in terms of our recruitment, but not quite where we need to be yet. But it's been a fascinating look back at how we've seen the recruitment that we've done so far for this season. Right, we're going to have a break. When we come back, it will be time to turn our attention to Saturday's trip down to St James Park to take on Exeter City.
PSF Steel Limited is a trade supplier of steel fabrication and erection services to the new build, construction and refurbishment market in southern England. With their unrivaled depth of experience, they excel at providing their customers with high quality and cost-effective steel fabrication solutions. Their customers include national and regional house builders, such as Barratt Homes, Bellway Homes, the Vistry Group and Taylor Wimpey. They pride themselves on their service-based ethos and commitment to customer service excellence, which includes full technical backup and on-site services and support. If you would like more information, go to www.psfsteel.co.uk. That's www.psfsteel.co.uk.
Hello fellow addicts, I'm so excited to tell you all about our micropub, the River Ale House. The River Ale House is based in East Greenwich. It has 6 Pub of the Year awards, an ever-changing selection of amazing beer. It's owned by Charlton fans, walkable to the ground in just 20 minutes with buses that go direct to the Valley too. If your matchday routine includes a drink with your friends, you must join your fellow addicts in the River. See you soon.
Right, welcome back to Charlton Live. This is the big match preview. Before the break there, we were scoring our summer signings out of 10. A few people are chucking in some suggestions for Nathan Jones as well. Michael saying he should get 7. James saying a 5. Scott a 7. Robin wants to see an 8.5. And Scott saying over the next couple of years we'll turn into a solid 9. You just got to trust the process and see us grow. Well, hopefully we'll be seeing some growth on Saturday as we make our way down to St James Park to take on Exeter City. Delighted to say that once again joining us on the show from the newly renamed You Don't Know What You're Doing pod is John Beer. How you doing, John, my friend?
Hi, chaps. Thanks for having me. I'm good. I'm very good.
Lovely stuff. Thanks for joining us again. I mean, you're nosebleed territory in the table. You're sitting one place above us, obviously in 11th. How would you say the start of the season has gone for the Grecians so far?
Rather surprising, to be fair. I mean, I say surprising. We were quietly optimistic with the recruitment we brought in that we would do okay. We brought in Woodsy, who was Ryan Woods for those Charlton fans, who was sort of instrumental in basically keeping us up last season. We lost, I think, from January, we only lost twice of him in the side. And as soon as we brought him in, we felt as though we were going to have a squad strong enough to be able to compete. Maybe not necessarily in the playoffs, but in and around, because that's the kind of form we had coming into the end of last season. So surprised, but also we were a little bit quite optimistic. So yeah, it's been a brilliant start, as you said.
Obviously improved, I think, year on year since you've come back into League One, John. And under Gary Caldwell, I'm interested to know what Exeter make of him and what they expect of him this year. As I say, I think you're 14th one year, 13th the next. Now you're up in 11th. So obviously a long way to go, but you are improving. What does good look like for Exeter fans, and what do they make of Gary Caldwell so far?
Yes, it's a really good question, because I think if you had asked that question in January last season, I think 99.9% of City fans would have said they wanted him out. I think we went 100 days without a league win, which is pretty astonishing at this level. And to keep your job as well is pretty, interesting. But I mean, he really turned it around. Like I said, we had playoff form from January onwards last season. And I think he's won the fans over again. I think the board were criticised very heavily last January as to why Gary Caldwell was staying. We were sort of looking like we were down and out. It was only because, and I said this last season, that there were 4 worse sides in the division. That is one of the main reasons why we were okay, or we felt like we were going to be okay throughout the course of the season. But he's turned it around. He's done really well in the summer to bring in players. As everybody knows, Exeter has a very small budget, probably, if not the smallest, the second smallest in the division. So to be able to be competing where we are is testament to Marcus, our head of recruitment, and Gary, because they found profile of players that they want, and they brought them in. So yeah, I mean, I think at the moment everyone's Gary in, but you know how football is; it could change very quickly.
John, what do you think about the standard of the league this season? Because obviously you guys have been here a while now, and people were saying last season's League One was sort of quote unquote easier. And then obviously we've had a few like new money teams come up, and because you've had a similar sort of start to us, like what do you make of it this season?
Yeah, I think at the start of the season, objectively people would have said it's a tougher division. From what I've seen so far, I'm really not actually too impressed with a lot of the teams above us. In fact, I've been more impressed by teams below us, teams like Stevenage, who really came and gave us a difficult game down in Exeter. And I mean, in all fairness, I've not seen every team above us, so it's unfair to say. But I watched us play against Huddersfield. I thought, although we lost 2-0 and deserved to lose, they didn't really carry a lot of weight behind them. I think they're very beatable. I've seen a couple of Wrexham games. They look pretty beatable. So the teams that people coming up, Stockport as well, watched them play against Barnsley, and I just thought, when I watched that game, I remember thinking, well, there's no reason why we can't beat them. Stockport being largely carried by one individual, Louis Barry. So there's definitely quality players in those sides, but as squads, I really am surprised, and I think that is giving City a good opportunity to maybe push a little bit higher up the table.
Yeah, especially, I mean, obviously, I think we probably spoke before about the fan ownership that you have at Exeter City, which makes it difficult to compete. But in terms of the players you have brought in this summer and the ones that you've had over the last few years, who's standing out? And a lot of Charlton fans talking about Josh McGuinness. I saw he got a hat-trick against Barnet the other day. I nearly fell off my chair. But I remembered he got a hat-trick for us once as well, actually, against Bristol Rovers. But Purrington, one of our Wembley heroes, scored against us last season. Who are the players who've been standing out for the Grecians this year?
Yeah, well, for me, and I don't know if City fans will completely agree, but I think every time I've watched him, he's just looked fantastic. Is our loanee, Kamari Doyle. We got him on loan from Brighton, who they signed him from Southampton, and I think he's getting a lot of stick in the summer. He sort of said he'd moved to Brighton in order to pursue and go further in his career, and then he got loaned to us, and he was sort of getting a lot of stick because they didn't see Exeter as progressing in your career, which might be a fair point. But he's come and he's really, really been good for us. He's one of those players who offers us something that not many players at this level can, which is the ability to sort of turn on the ball, attack, play incredibly weighted through balls, which is really important to the way we play with our wing backs. So for me, our sort of standout player from the summer is Kamari Doyle. But as to regards to Josh McGuinness, been really surprising. A lot of people said that we've signed this old striker that nobody really wants, but actually, even when he came in, people were like, "Well, he's a good backup." I wouldn't start again without him. He's been so good, and he's pivotal to the way Gary wants to play. His hold-up play is still amazing at this level. He's always in around that 6-yard area, which Gary is massive on. He's always talking about getting players in the scoring zone. He was, in fact, quite adamant that was nearly the reason. The reason we were fighting relegation last season was because we just didn't have that player to get in that 6-yard box and score. We were creating loads of chances, but didn't have anyone to actually put the ball in. So Josh McGuinness has been great. Ben has really struggled to get in the side this season. We've got so much strength on that left-hand side. Vinnie Harper, Dimitri Mitchell, and he's just not quite managed to get himself a permanent place in the team. But when he has come in, he's done really well.
Yeah, good. I'm glad to hear that Josh McGuinness is doing well because he is a very nice chap. And just finally, tell us obviously a little bit about your pod. You changed the name this year. I think David's having a bit of a break at the moment as well. But I always say it's very loosely based on Exeter City. How have things been going recently with You Don't Know What You're Doing?
Yeah, it's been great. I think very recently we've been. We've just got wind that the players are starting to listen to the pod. So we've had a few quite funny Twitter interactions with the players, and they've been really good to us. The goalkeeper most recently, Joe Whitworth, I think he tweeted he wanted to come to a Coldplay concert with us. So yeah, it is loosely based on Exeter City, but also talks about sort of life in general. But yeah, we do try and keep City at the forefront because that's how it started. So yeah.
Lovely stuff. Well, I always know when there's been players listening to our pod because I find myself blocked by them on Twitter. I just realised I'm blocked by CHARLTON'S the other day, but there you go. Right, John, it's been a pleasure to have you on. Best of luck for the rest of the season as always, and cheers for your time this evening.
No, thank you for having me. Cheers, guys.
There we go. That's John from the You Don't Know What You're Doing podcast to look ahead to the game from an Exeter City perspective. Let's look ahead to it from a Charlton perspective as well. With the all-important team news, Terry spoke to the Addicks boss Nathan Jones earlier on today.
Current situation regards Nathan Jones, for example, Chukwuemeka, Dan Potts, of course, who we haven't talked about before, and Daniel Connor.
Well, Nathan Jones is fully fit. It's just he won't be getting the game. He won't be getting the game anytime soon. But in terms of that, we've not made a big thing about injuries, but they're considerable in what we've done. There's not many teams in our league could cope with what we're coping at the minute, and I'm still demanding from this group of players, even though we've got a lot of big players out, size, power, aggression, regulars, game changers. There's so much. I haven't made a big thing of it, but it is, and the group of players now that are giving me absolutely everything, and I'm delighted with those, and we've been picking up results, and using the squad, and people have had to step up. So I've been very proud of that. Look, we're in no better situation really. Obviously, Gaston's had another week, but everyone else we're in no better situation in terms of selection and stuff than we were a week ago. So look, we've just got to make sure we batten down the hatches. We've got to get through a tough period in injuries and come through it, because the games come thick and fast. Tough games on the road, and there's some journeys, you know what I mean? We won't be seeing the Valley much in terms of league action in the next month, but we've just got to keep trucking.
I apologise now, and I'll apologise to Lloyd.
Listen, I'd like nothing better than to be selecting a young fit Nathan Jones, but them days are well gone.
But in terms of the style we play, the high intensity in the press and everything, are injuries almost inevitable?
No, necessarily, because a lot of them are not so they're not muscular ones. We've had a variation. Lloyd Jones has picked up something within the bone. Daniel Connor was a tackle, So we've had a lot of, TC was a bad tackle. Daniel Carner was a late tackle, but not a bad one in any way, but he was a late tackle. Josh Edwards, for example, was a bad challenge that we've had. So all the injuries we picked up, we haven't picked up many muscular ones. So it's not like structurally, are we doing too much? Are we demanding too much from them? A lot of them. Gassan was thing. Chucks is injured, but with the greatest respect, we have to manage Chucks in terms of where he is. And Kane was one where he did a mechanism with the knee that can happen. So it's not been anything muscularly, so that we've been demanding too much or we've been too much intensity. It's just been one of those things, and a few of them have been when we've been attacking. So Daniel Carner's one was a late challenge in the box when he was stretching play to cross. As I said, I've said quite a lot about Tyrese Campbell's one, that those are the ones we have to get rid of, because they're gratuitous ones, and I don't really like those ones. So look, not really. So I think the intensity and everything comes with the way we want to play. But if we were picking up hamstring injuries because of that, then okay, we'd have to readjust. But it's not, and there's been a variation in them.
We're back to league action this weekend. A failed trip, but we go there 4 league games unbeaten, 6 in total, and up against an Exeter side who are alongside us in the table as well. And up until recently, we're in good form, but a couple of defeats. What are you expecting from this week?
Again, another League One test, but it's a well coached. A really dangerous side. It's always a tough place to go to, Exeter. Real good club, real good pedigree. They always got a clear way of doing things, and a club I've enjoyed coming up against. But very, very tough test. We know the threats they have. We had a tough game done there last year. We could have nicked it in injury time when Alfie May hit the post and round the keeper. So we knew it'd be a tough game. It's another League One test.
And this won't surprise you, but it'll be a full house of Valley faithful heading down into the West Country. Superb support.
Yeah, and not a bad place to visit either. If they want any tour information on the way down, I know the area very well, having played at the Oval and being 40-50 minutes from there. It's a wonderful part of the world, lovely cathedral. So yeah, they'll enjoy the pre-match, and hopefully we can give them something that they can enjoy the post as well.
There you go. So contact the club if you want Nathan Jones to give you sort of a visitor's guide to the southwest of England. He seems to know everything about it. They do have a nice cathedral there, to be fair. Stuart says they've got pubs more than cathedrals, is what he's interested in. I'm not a man of culture like me, obviously, Stuart. He's not going to be playing though, Tom, unfortunately. So that's bad news that Nathan Jones is not going to be playing on Saturday.
Yeah, it messes with our team, doesn't it? I don't know what we're going to do, but maybe he can stand on the touchline and rant and rave and sprint up and down and all of that stuff instead. But yeah, that made me laugh a lot when I saw that earlier today. And again, hearing it back, I don't think that will get old.
Yeah.
But yeah, good. It seems the fact that he was just laughing and joking with it, we don't see a lot of that, do we, from him? So that was good to see.
Yeah, he seems to be in a good mood. I mean, considering we've won 2 in 10 in League One. Sorry to bring it down a notch there, Tom. But I was just thinking, the run of form in the league, obviously. So we're 4 unbeaten. Beat Birmingham, played really well against Stockport. Disappointing performance against Barnsley. I thought a disappointing performance against Wrexham, but we fought back and got a point. The actual form in terms of the league obviously needs to improve. If at the start of the season they always go judge us after 10 games. Well, if this last 10 games were at the start of the season and we'd only won 2, Tom, we'd be a bit concerned.
We would, but let's not forget that we did start the season okay, and we got ourselves in a good position. So, yeah, I'm not panicking just yet. I think the problem we've got is that Stockport game has shown it can happen, right? And we all said it, but that's not enough. A sample size of 1 in the amount of games we played, I think it's 13, isn't it now, is not enough to say that this team is promotion material, sadly. But at the same time, it's shown it can happen. So am I panicking? Still no, absolutely not. Are we still in the hunt? Absolutely yes, points-wise. But we just can't afford to lose too much more ground to lots of those teams. So this is where you start to get to the stage where there's games that you really should be winning. I don't know if Exeter is one of those. They're above us in the league. I think they've got a game in hand on us as well. So I'm not going to say that this is the weekend. But for a team that wants to be in the top 6, you're going to have to start looking at most of the games and at the very least taking a point. So Yeah, we need it to click sooner rather than later. We're running out of time if we do want to maintain or sustain a promotion push. But I don't think we're out of it. I think John made a good point. We all talked about the strength of the league in advance. It was a good question from Tash. And actually, I think I agree with him that it has dropped off a little bit in terms of now when you look at them, you go, well, actually, nobody is that good. And sadly, that includes us again. So, we're kind of running out of time. We need to just get into a bit of the rhythm and start picking up those wins again. But I do think they'll come. I do. And I'm not worried just yet.
Yeah, outside of Birmingham, no one's massively impressed me this season. I mean, when we played Stockport the other day, and we were like, well, we played really well against a good team. We got thumped 5 at home against Wycombe the other day. Wycombe having a good season as well, by the looks of it. But, I mean, obviously, I haven't seen Wycombe yet this season, but when we've played them towards the end of last season, I wasn't thinking, blimey, that's Barcelona in the wings there waiting to come out, Tash. The form going into this game, then when someone James jokingly asking if it's a must win, but I mean at some point we have got to start picking up more points, away from home, and the performance against Southend in the FA Cup was quite a fascinating one in that we won, which is good, but there were elements of it that were quite concerning. So I mean we need a performance minimum, and we do need to start picking up wins again.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the fact that we scored 4 at the weekend, I was like, oh, that's good. And then I thought, we have also conceded 3. I think we've got into a bit of a bad habit as well of conceding first. And obviously, I know, you don't win the points based on who concedes first. But having that mentality change would be nice, because I feel like we started the season very well in the aspect of like keeping clean sheets and being tight at the back. And if it means we have to go back to that and sacrifice a little bit in attack, especially this weekend, as you say, I mean, the nice thing about League One, I suppose, if the standard isn't as good as it, you should feel like you should go at these teams and get something. But I feel like it's important to, not to sound like Nathan Jones, but to go back to the basics, because we've definitely forgotten how to do that. And I'd rather do what we would do in the beginning and grinding out those results when we needed to with the 1-0s, or get a late winner or whatever, than be sort of doing what we've been doing recently. I think as well, looking back at the last month or so, we have had some like arguably hard fixtures, like the Stockport, Wrexham, Birmingham, like they were never going to be that easy. I think now, hopefully, touch wood, moving forwards, like Exeter is the start of a run that hopefully will be a little bit nicer. But yeah, I agree. I think now is the time we can put a bit of a run together. I mean, if you look at the people who shan't be named down the road in the Championship, put a nice run together and look where they are now in the league. So I think we could easily do the same thing in League One. Just got to go for it.
Yeah, I mean, as Stuart points out, first of 3 away league games this month. We've still got Huddersfield to come. I think we've got Burton towards the end of the month as well. John's saying that you can't have a repeat of the Bristol Rovers away performance. Dudley saying we've not been great at times on the road this season. What sort of game are you expecting, Tom? So Exeter joint best defensive record in the division. I think if I looked this up the other day, I think it was joint with Wrexham, who we scored twice against, ironically, whilst at the same time not really looking like we were going to score a goal in that second half. So yeah, John's saying we've got to be high energy and impose ourselves on Exeter. How do we approach Saturday?
I think we have to. Yeah, I'm not going to do my bit for the Exeter Tourist Board, but I'm not expecting a great game because, as you say, they don't concede a lot. They don't score a lot. We don't score a lot. And recently, we've conceded a few, so that doesn't make for good reading. But if we go there and if we play with a bit of intensity, then then that's the way to beat them. That's what we have to do. We have to impose ourselves. I think Tash is right. The first goal in our games plays a huge part in the outcome. But if we can score first and if we can get ourselves in front in the first half, then we stand half a chance of getting all 3 points. But we've got to up the intensity. That's the big thing. You look at any of the games where we've really impressed this season, it's been hard pressing, it's been intense. And that's easy to do when you've got teams coming at you and teams with quality. I don't know exactly where Exeter sit on that scale, but for me, irrespective of that, you have to go there and you have to do that. Bristol was the complete opposite. We sat off, we let them dictate, despite the fact they were down and in a poor run of form, found ourselves 3-0 down. And despite that, when we then upped our intensity, they kind of had nothing left to lose at that point. We managed to get ourselves 2 goals back. So we've proven we can do it. We just got to do it consistently and we've got to be intense. And if we can, we might get something.
Robbie's saying, why do we have to change our style according to the opposition? We should set up our team to suit our strengths, and the opposition should have to adjust their style. Robin's saying we reckons we're going to go down there and win by 2 goals to 0. I'm looking at the team news. Obviously, other than Nathan Jones not playing, it's that age-old question. Where should we start? I mean, I can't see it not being Lee Byrne and Godden up top, Tash. So obviously it depends what shape we're going to find ourselves ending up in. But if we go for the 4 and then either the box or the diamonds, same question we're going to ask every week, really. What's the first choice midfield for you at this moment in time?
What a question. I feel like I'd actually start Luke Berry. I feel like I'd rather go on the front foot in this game rather than sort of having the midfield where nothing goes through them and it's not very creative. I'd rather go attacking. So I'd rather have Luke Berry in there, to be honest with you, than Karoy, if I'm being honest.
So that's over Doherty as well. So I mean, James is saying Taylor and Coventry have to play. So is that the bottom 2 and then the top 2 for you then, Tash?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, defensively, we know where we are with the likes of Kane Ramsey. Doesn't look like he's going to be back yet, but we don't know how long because Nathan Jones doesn't talk about sort of timings. But obviously, Watson came off injured, and we saw Zach Mitchell starting at right back last week. Tom, is there another option there for you? Maybe Reg coming in, but I mean, it's a tough one.
Yeah, I think probably the weak link has been Gillespie when we've been in a 2. So if there's a way that you can get Zach and Alex and Reg and then probably Edwards, maybe that works. I don't know, because I don't know how comfortable they are playing alongside Mitchell in that 2, but that would work. Or you go in a 3 and then Gillespie's looks a little bit better when there's been a 3 there. But again, it depends on how Jones sets up. So it'll be interesting to see. As we've all said, the losses in defence have been the big problem, really, in terms of Jones and Ramsey in particular. So yeah, the quicker they're fit, the better. But I wouldn't be averse to seeing that. I thought I didn't see the whole game on the weekend, but from what I've heard, Zach did well. Obviously, got his first goal as well, which will do wonders for him. And we've been calling for him a few times, or I've seen people do that. So that would be interesting if he got a run out.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, as Scott's saying, maybe a Simway's obviously come back from his loan, Tash, but I just thought the fact that Zach started there ahead of him on Saturday, I thought might have been Jones testing it out, I guess, ahead of the league schedule. But yeah, I mean, do you think Zach would be more likely to get that right back slot?
I think so. I mean, yeah, I saw about him getting recalled from his loan. I don't know how much he played at Hartlepool. Do you? Like, I don't know how much.
He after I think they changed manager, but he played the last couple, and actually see the fans were upset to see him leave after that.
Okay.
But he was only there for a month or whether it was anyway, so he was due to come back, and they just didn't extend it.
Yeah, I don't think he's out of the question, but I think it probably makes sense if Zach goes there. I think it's in way. In my head, I think maybe he's been brought back to add some bodies in rather than going to be starting, or being picked. But I think he probably needs to go out on loan again. But maybe it's just a case of bringing him in for now and then send him out again later, probably.
Excellent stuff. Right, well, let's see how we get on Saturday. Stuart says Reg should go back in. No Ramsey and Watson will force Jones's hand. All hell let loose, says anyone except Alan Campbell in the midfield. John would like to see Berry, Taylor, Coventry and Doherty in the midfield as we make our way down to Devon on Saturday. Right, we've run out of time on this week's big match preview. Absolutely flown by. I really enjoyed going through the new signings and giving them a score out of 10 and getting that debate going amongst everyone who's listened. So massive thanks to everyone who joined in with that and gave you scores. And hopefully some of those players, if we were to do that again towards the end of the season, would score a little bit higher once they've really settled in. And we see where we're going to end up on Saturday. Massive thanks to John, who joined us earlier on in the show. John Beer, Tom and Tash, been a pleasure as per always.
Cheers both.
Cheers, guys. Enjoy Exeter.
Lovely stuff. We will do, whether Tom's wearing his yellow shirt or not. Now, bit of a strange one for Sunday. There's every chance that we're going to do the show an hour earlier because Tom's staying down there, and then we might do the show before he leaves rather than trying to do it while he's on the train or something, which would be a disaster. So the show on Sunday will probably start at 9 a.m. instead of 10 a.m. live on YouTube. I'll put the details up on Twitter and whatnot, just in case. But just be aware, you might have to get up an hour earlier if you want to watch us live and join in. Right, I'm Louis Mendes. This has been Charlton Live, the big match preview, sponsored by PSF Steel Limited. So we'll be back on Sunday morning. We look forward to see you then. Talk back whatever happens down at Exeter. We'll see you then.